And this is a very exaggerated example. As you can see, I made the laser beam really big, but this just to get the point across. It has to be a laser beam or some type of coherent light that is shined towards two double slits, the double slits in the wall. Will create a wave pattern on the back wall. Now, this is not disputed. I do agree with this. There's plenty of proof for that because I do believe that light is both some aspect of an understanding of a particle as well as a wave, and this proves that it is definitely a wave function. Now, during this experiment, if you block one of the slits and only have the wave on the one side go through the slit, it'll only produce one wave. So that wave will only produce one spot on the wall or one line on the wall because it no longer is interfering with itself. Now, some people view the ether field a little bit different than I do. Some of them look at it as a fluid. In that instance, there's some experiments that show like water with a projectile in the water being shot will send out a shock wave, and that wave will have the same effect as the one above, the previous one. It'll create a wave pattern on that back wall. So a gun shooting projectile through fluid, whether it's the fluid in the invisible world or the ether field fluid, it would come up with the same result as we had previously with both slits open. Now I want to pause here to take a time to explain something to you that I call conditioning for a result, which has to do with indoctrination, which is my first class when I was talking about indoctrination. And I want to review the Michelson-Morley experiment because I think that's very crucial that you understand that. Sometimes if you explain it in a different way, then you'll understand it a little bit better. And I want to make sure you don't miss this point because this is a very critical point. Now, this test was set up as follows: to try to find if the ether exists. A beam of light was split and sent at a 90-degree angle to one another. One beam was aimed towards a direction of the Earth's spin, and the direction of the Earth is traveling through the universe. It was proposed that if the Earth is moving through an ether field, then the beam directed against the ether would be slower than the other beam. The beams were determined to be the same. The no result was interpreted to mean that the ether does not exist. Now let's look at the same test, the Michelson-Morley test, only this time I'll set up the parameters. The test was set up as follows. The speed of light is approximately 186,000 miles per second. It has been stated that the speed of light is a constant. In other words, nothing since the beginning of time has affected the speed of light. A light beam was split and sent at 90-degree angles to one another. One beam was aimed towards the direction of the Earth's spin and direction the Earth is traveling through the universe. It was proposed that if the Earth is moving through an ether field, then the beam directed towards the ether would be slower than the other beam. The beams were determined to be the same. The no result was interpreted to mean that even the ether has no effect on the speed of light. Now, as you can see, that has to do with conditioning for result. You see what I did? I changed the parameters of the test for you to expect a certain result, and the results came out to match what I had set up. But it's called conditioning for result. So always try to see to look at the results and try to determine what the results are saying. And even if someone sets up the conditioning for the test for a result, always look at possible other possibilities. Otherwise, you will be indoctrinated and manipulated into thinking one way. But always try to think outside the box. Now, just because you think outside the box doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just a way to make sure to test it, to make sure that it meets all aspects and all parameters. Okay, so now we come back to the double slit experiment to see if we can see what they're doing here. They say that an electron gun shoots an electron, but in order for that electron, one electron, to create a wave pattern on the back wall, it has to go through both slits at the same time. So it is both here and there at the same time, which goes into this understanding of superposition. Now that seems a little bit weird. So I want you to sit and pause the tape, this video right now, and try to think about how are we being conditioned for the result. Now that you've had some time to think about it, in my opinion, this example assumes that an electron can be shot as a projectile. In some explanations, it is assumed that moving electrons causes energy flow. In my opinion, this may be a part of the explanation. However, the underlying flow of energy is a result of the quanta effect chain reaction. So go back and look at my lesson on quanta. So in my opinion, this explanation seems to make more sense than having one electron go through both slits at the same time. And this example only makes sense if you accept the existence of the ether field as a necessary medium for the propagation of light, which takes into effect cause and effect in association with the connectivity of the ether, which is one of the major points I try to get across throughout my lessons. Cause and effect in association with the connectivity of the ether. Now, as I said previously, there may be such a thing as an electron gun that it can actually shoot an electron, but primarily it is, in my opinion, an energy initiator. An electron exposed to heat creating an excited electron that increases in spin rate, oscillation, and/or vibration that starts a quanta effect chain reaction. This forms a light wave made of many spiraling electromagnetic overlapping beams. The direction and the intensity of the chain reaction is determined by the energy initiator. The spread direction of the beam must be such that it covers both slits. Now, as you'll realize, this seems to be similar to the projectile being shot through water or through the ether field as a fluid, and it has the same effect, only I believe that the ether field is stationary, does not move, but it does have the same chain reaction result. This is a variation of the double slit experiment where we add a device to detect a particular electron. In this case, we want to see what happens when we turn on a detector. Now you will notice that as soon as I turn the detector on, the wave function pattern on the back wall is eliminated. Because what happens is the detector, if the beam from the detector is equal to or greater than the laser beam, then it will cause a wave function collapse. Now, if we look at this same scenario using the energy initiator with the detector in place next to the slits, and we turn on the detector. So again, even with the electron gun that creates a wave pattern going towards the slits, which causes the double slit variation of the wave function on the back wall. Now that we turn on the detector, that the wave function is collapsed, just like before with the laser. Only now we have this electron. So this may be some proof if they truly are able to detect one electron with a detector, as they say in the experiments on the internet or in books. Then I have to accept that, and if that is true, then that electron is still there, and the detector will detect the electron, but it wipes out or causes the wave function to collapse. Then on the other side of the wall, if that electron continues to cause a chain reaction into like a one wave, or whether it's just one particle that continues to the back wall, that I'm not sure, but it seems that a moving electron does seem to initiate the chain reaction associated with the wave function. But once again, it's just one electron going through at any particular time. And that electron is spiraling, just like the wave function is, or the beam is a concept of spiraling, so that one electron can go through one slot or the other slot or somewhere in between, but it's only one electron. And if you send a series of electrons, you will turn on with the detector. The detector will detect it at different areas, and sometimes it'll detect it at the other slot. So let me kind of help to summarize this. I do not believe there's such a thing as an electron gun. I believe that it is an electron initiator. The electron initiator initiates a wave function now electrons, I do believe, can move in a short distance. For instance, atoms sharing electrons, one's short, one's got an extra one, and because of chemical bonds, and also things like you heat up metal, that could release some electrons from the metal. But primarily speaking, electrons cannot be shot like a projectile, in my opinion. This electron gun, as I was researching this electron gun, is really an electron initiator. It's the heating of an element, and that element excites the electron and sends that electron through a spiraling magnetic field that has alternating north-south polarity. And that is the same thing that I've initiated with you, try to get you to understand as far as the wave function. If you can think of electricity flowing through the conduit, which is the ether field. So the ether field is a conduit. It doesn't move, just like the wire doesn't move. It's but the electricity or the flow of light or whatever, the energy flows through the conduit. So you have to have a conduit in order to have any kind of like a wave function. So if you think of it that way, so the wave function, it does the same thing that I propose, is that you excite an electron, it drops down into the ether field, it releases the potential energy to become realized energy, and that flows through a spiraling magnetic north-south polarity, alternating north-south polarity spiraling magnetic field, and there's a spiraling electric field in that spiral, and it looks like a wave function, as you've seen in the previous lessons. Now, as far as the detector is concerned, again, I do not believe that there's such a thing as a detector that can detect one electron, in my opinion. If that is, it's part of the energy, the electron. It's not the same electron that comes from the energy initiator. It's a different electron. Remember, it's a flow. It's a cause and effect and a chain reaction. So it's a different electron that goes through the slit. It's a different electron that hits the back wall. It is not the same electron. Now these electrons are, in my opinion, going in and out of this ether field into back and forth into reality. So as it's going past the detector, you may be able to detect an electron. That I do not know. But in my opinion, you're not looking at the light wave. You are looking at that one electron, because you cannot electricity and energy is massless. It's not the flowing of electrons. You got to get away from that. Energy is massless, flowing in connectivity, chain reaction through the conduit known as the ether field. Now you notice that I've been very careful throughout the discussion. I say if it can be shot and if it can be detected. So those things I do fudge a little bit on that, but I still believe that I am correct in what I've said so far. Now they've painted themselves in a corner as far as I'm concerned, because in order to go through this thing called the void, this expansive void between the planets and way out there in the universe, in order to get across from one side to the other, from a star to us, it has to be shot as particles from there to here in order for them in their understanding of things. But in my understanding, we have the ether field, which is the conduit that connects us with that star, and so you have the wave function that comes all the way from there to here. And they cannot say that because they don't believe in the ether field. So again, I think that once you understand the ether field, it makes a whole lot of sense on a whole lot of different levels. And thank you. So some summary notes. Remember, it is not important for me to be right. It is more important that I make you think and for you to be a participant in determining the truth. I believe that the Newtonian understanding of the ether is the best explanation for many aspects of physics, such as the double slit experiment. However, do your own research to test my conclusions. Aristotle, Plato, Descartes, Ptolemy, Kepler, Maxwell, Faraday, Newton, Tesla, Einstein, etc., and others had some understanding of the ether. However, many ether supporters thought of the ether as a fluid versus my thinking on the subject. I stand with Newton's description as an elastic, invisible, strong, and subtle matter that exists everywhere in different forms. I stray away from the different forms unless he is referring to the rarefied areas compared to the areas known as the void. And in addition, when you're researching the ether, it may be referred to as the ether spelled with an A. And now you know more of the story. Stay tuned. This is John McCamick with Truth University. Good day.